On today's podcast, we have Chris Billam-Smith, who is the current WBO cruiserweight world champion. Chris recently won his world title at his beloved Premier League side, Bournemouth's Vitality Stadium, beating his previously undefeated ex-stablemate, Lawrence Okolie, in a majority decision. Prior to that fight, Okolie had never been knocked down in his entire professional career. Chris had him on the canvas 3 times that night. Chris is the main man in the famous McGuigan trading stable, who've trained world champions including David Haye, George Groves, Carl Frampton, and Josh Taylor, and is now home to some of Britain's most exciting boxing talent, the likes of Azim and Caroline Dubois. Chris also stars in an exciting new documentary, The Stable, which goes behind the scenes of the iconic McGuigan gym and professional boxing in general. That will be released later this year. I personally can't wait for that one to come out. Chris is an athlete who has risen to the pinnacle of his sport through determination, skill, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. He's a powerful reminder of how far focus, dedication, and professionalism can take us all. In this episode, Chris talks us through that world title fight, his preparation, and providing us an absolute masterclass in emotional control. We delve deep into the life and career of this incredible athlete, from his expert support network to all his routines and habits that have helped propel him to the top. I hope you enjoy. Chris Billam-Smith, welcome to the Accelerating Excellence podcast. Great to have you on, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Honoured to be on. I'm excited.
Wicked. Well, I want to start with that classic question I asked, which is, what was the first moment boxing entered your life?
My first ever memory of boxing is actually my auntie screaming at Prince Azim on the TV when I must have been about 6 or 7, and we were just having a family party. And I remember running through the lounge, and she was literally like this close to the TV, and she was just screaming at, go on, Prince, knock him out. So yeah, that's my first ever memory. But actually taking part was a little, my brother took me down a gym, which is like in a garage in this little back street in Bournemouth. And yeah, and then I did very little bit there. The first session I ever actually went to, Molly McCann, the UFC fighter, she was coaching me because she'd been doing it from a younger age, and I was a beginner, so we had like 3 of us as beginners, and she was teaching us. So yeah,
that's some introduction.
Yeah, so yeah, and yeah, obviously now she's absolutely flying as well, so it's great to see, and we've stayed in touch over the years. But yeah, I mean, I only went a handful of times during my teenage years until I was 16, and then met a mate at college, my mate Dean Perkins, and he was boxing. I was playing football, Sunday league, and dabbling at a few other sports probably still. And then I thought, yeah, I met my mate Dean, and thought I'll go train with him, get fit for football, and just loved the training. And then went and watched him fight, and we were all there chanting his name, chanting Dino. And I just remember that must be amazing. There's like 20 of us there, like having all your mates there, like chanting for you, and having that atmosphere there for you must be amazing. So I was like, I'm going to give this a go, and I want to just have one fight so I can experience it. And then 10 months later, I was having my first fight.
Amazing. And what was it? So there was that almost that movie version of it, right? That the fight, your mates there. I mean, obviously you've just come up back off the back of a scrap where you had 15,000 mates screaming your name. But like, was there anything else about the sport that attracted you to it?
I think it's just that it's just a primal sport, isn't it? It's just that it just grabs you, and I think it's just very primal, but also like everything you get with boxing, it's you against everything, really, everything that's thrown at you in a boxing gym. Every rep, every burpee you have to do, every minute and every second on the bag is concentrating. And I just loved that I was in control, because I played a lot of team sports as a kid, and you could have the best game of your life playing football, but you could still lose 5-0. And I always use that analogy because I think I did have the best game of my life once when we lost 5-0. I was playing like sweeper, and I was basically like a goalkeeper because the other team was so good. And yeah, but I had a phenomenal game that game, and I still lost. So I hated that feeling of just not being fully in control. Whereas I feel with boxing, I've been able to control my own destiny and my own path, and take responsibility for things that didn't go my way, and then also by doing that, give myself the best opportunity by training harder or making changes here and there and adapting to be able to reach the top of the sport. And that really appeals to me. Having that control over the outcome as much as possible. Obviously, there's always going to be variables, but I feel like boxing is probably one of the sports that involves the least amount of luck, maybe in terms of actually during the game and the fight. There's the least amount of luck because it's all about your perception of vision and punches and that sort of thing. Whereas football, you can take it can hit a shin, a shot can hit a shin and spin off, and it can either hit the post, go inside the post, go outside the post, and that is literally luck. Like there's no control in that. There's no one's smart enough yet to be able to go right. If I hit it against his shin, it will spin off this angle, and no one's brain can quite work that quick yet. So I think that helped me, just focus and be in control of the situation. But also the respect and the discipline I learned very early on in a boxing gym I absolutely loved. And as I was playing football at the time, I sort of ended up falling out of love with football because I was like, well, this is how it should be. This respect and discipline, this respect in the sport. Whereas in football, even when I look or play it now, like if a few years ago, I used to play six-a-side now and again, and I'd turn into this disrespectful person. I was like, this isn't me. Like, but it just seems to be the way with football, and some other sports as well, where there's just a lack of respect for the referee, the opposition, and stuff. Whereas in boxing, obviously, that's 1 second you could be last second of the last round, and you're trying to knock the bloke out. The bell goes, and you're embracing, and there's just a huge amount of respect there for your opponent.
It's a special sport in that respect. I don't think anything else comes close to it in that area. I mean, so you fall in love with this sport, you have your first scrap, you're getting into it. At what point did you think, because you're a relatively late starter when you look at the development and the academy pathway in the UK, especially in the sort of the Olympic pathway, but at what point did you think, I've already got something here, I'm actually pretty good at this, beyond that initial attraction?
Yeah, I think I never thought about it being a job until it become a job, if that makes sense, and being a full-time career. And I'm very much a realist, and I like to sort of have huge goals, but they're just big goals, and taking the step, not trying to jump to the top of the mountain, taking it step by step. And sort of won a few fights. I was like, okay, I'll go into I wanted to win a Western County novice title when I started, and then I won one. In fact, the first time I won one was I actually got a bye through to the semi-finals of the novice championships. So it was for people between 10 and 20 bouts. I got a bye to the semi-finals because no one entered throughout that, and then I boxed a guy in the semis and won by 1 point. And I boxed a guy in the final who got to the final the year before. So I sort of thought, okay, I beat him and I kind of feel worthy, even though I've only had 2 fights to win it. I kind of feel worthy because he boxed his way to get there 2 years in a row. And I won that, and then I went straight into the national championships and broke my hand in a fight and beat good kids on the way. But even the fight I broke my hand in, I won the fight, and I thought, okay, that's good. Let's go back in these next year and see how far I can go. Then got to the semi-final, losing to the eventual winner, who was unbeaten in his whole amateur career. And then got a call up to the Great Britain squad for an assessment, and I was so shocked by that. I remember when my coach told me, I was just like, wow, like I'm just a kid from down in Bournemouth, and didn't really expect to get a call up for. I only reached the semi-finals of the championships, and never expected really to get to the final because I knew who I was fighting in the semis, and the lad was so talented. But yeah, and we went on that. I was like, okay, well, next year I've got to semi this year. I'm gonna try and get to the final next year. And then the next year I got to the final and got another Great Britain assessment. Obviously the first one I didn't get on. And then this one I didn't get on. I was like, right, I'm moving up in weight because internationally they only had, I was boxing at 86 kilograms, and then internationally they only had 81 or 91. And I was too big to go down to 81. So I was like, I'm going to start moving up to 91. And then went up there and had a few issues here and there, shoulder issues, put me out for a while. Yeah, basically just that was my aim then to get on the Great Britain squad. So every step of the way, it was just goal by goal, like win a Western County. Okay, I end up winning the national title. Okay, well, let's go into the elite championship where it's the best group in the country. See how far we can get there. I've been season on season trying to improve on that. Reached the final, got beat in the final, but got on GB assessments. I thought, okay, now that's the aim, like try and get on the Great Britain squad. Okay, maybe I can go to the Olympics. So then that was the goal throughout my amateur career. And then towards the end, I reached another ABA final and got to the third assessment, which is the final assessment on Great Britain squad after that final, and didn't get on. And that was sort of like, wow, massive blow. And sort of
how did you process that blow? You know, it was a really compelling goal for you.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard, but I mean, in hindsight, the best thing that ever happened to me was not getting on, I think. But at the time, I really struggled. It was a week before Christmas. I got as a member, it was the 18th of December that I got the letter, and saying, you know, unfortunately, you haven't got in the squad. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go pro then. I'm going to do the ABAs one more time, which were in April, and then I'm going to turn pro. But in the meantime, try and find myself a coach. And I was sparring a lot up, obviously, up Shane's gym at the time. He's now my coach, and I just thought, okay, I'll start at the top, and if not, he can maybe give me advice on who to go and train with. And that's kind of what I thought, is he's never going to take me on. I've achieved nothing as an amateur. He's only ever trained international amateurs. I wasn't one of those. So yeah, that was my process, and I was really down in terms of just not knowing what was next. Thought I'd turn pro and be a very average pro, to be honest, because we didn't have the training structure down in Bournemouth, or even or I didn't really know anyone apart from Shane, who obviously, Carl Frampton at the time was world champion. He was training George Groves. That would have, when I asked, it would have been just before George Groves' world title fight. I asked him just after Haye boxed Bellew, so he was training David Haye for the first Bellew fight. So these are obviously superstar names. I'm like, he's not going to take little old me on. But yeah, that was so I thought he's
where do you think you had that confidence to even ask?
I thought, don't ask, don't get, and I literally said that to Shane on the phone. I had a good relationship because I've been sparring up at his gym for about 16 months, I think, at the time. So yeah, it was. I just thought, and I literally I said, hi Shane, I didn't get on GB. I'm going to turn pro after the ABAs. I just, to be honest, you know, I understand you got a busy gym, but I was just wondering if there's any chance you'd train me, and if not, give me advice on who to go with. You know, I understand sort of you're busy, but I just thought, don't ask, don't get, and that's literally what I said to him on the phone. And he was like, yeah, like we might be able to sort something out. And like, I think I caught him at a good time. I think David Haye just lost. I think he was just leaving the gym. I was going to ring him on the Monday after the Haye Bellew fight, funnily enough, and thought if he had a good mood, I'll call him then. And then obviously David's Achilles snapped and had to get pulled out of the fight eventually, and lost the fight. And then so I left it another week. So I think that was you know, sort of tactical thinking.
Play,
yeah. So I'll leave it another week, and I think to let the dust settle a bit. So yeah, that obviously panned out in my favour. But yeah, I just I don't know. I've always been one to not want to be cheeky as well. So I felt like that's probably a very cheeky thing to do for someone who's not like that. But I also just thought it's too good an opportunity not to ask, and thankfully I made that phone call, and here we are now.
Absolutely. And I mean, just for context of people who perhaps aren't into boxing, that McGuigan gym, it's one of the elite stables, not just in boxing, but probably across sport in terms of the caliber of the athletes in it. And so that evolution, you talked about some of those high profile world champion level fighters in that gym. You go from being this, like, you're humble when you describe that you hadn't had success in the amateurs, but semi-finals, finals. So you're at the top end there, and you suddenly go into this new environment where you really are, legitimately bottom of that pack to begin with. And you got to earn that respect from Shane still. He's kind of giving you a chance. What's going through your head at that point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when on the way home from after we'd had the meeting about me signing with the McGuigans, and I was beaming from ear to ear because I thought this is an opportunity that no one gets. Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm so fortunate. The stars have aligned. The timing's perfect for me to obviously ask. But yeah, I'd obviously gone from, especially down south and in Bournemouth, there wasn't a huge amount of even elite senior boxers, let alone ones that were reaching ABA finals. So I just I was very much a big fish in a small pond down here, and sort of the first in a few years to be sort of pushing the boxing. Had a few others coming through, but yeah, that was I was sort of the leader of the pack in that sense, and now I've gone from that to very much a very small fish in a huge pond, the biggest pond, where the talent in the gym, like the standard is set, and the standard is world champion or nothing. That's the aim for everyone who Shane trains, is it's world champion or nothing, and that's always the goal. And yeah, so it was that was a huge leap, but I enjoyed it, and just tried to just watch every spar. So I'd be watching Josh Taylor spar at the time, Carl Frampton, George Groves. I'd be watching all their sparring and trying to pick up things and learn, and just spend every hour of the day in the gym, basically. After my sessions or before my sessions, I'd get there early. I'd usually be the last one punching. I'd be the sort of the runt of the runt of the litter in that sense. And yeah, sort of just paid my dues there, I think, and just tried to learn as much as I could and pick things up. And yeah, it was a lot different to what I was used to, because back at the amateur club where I'd reach ABA finals, and they'd have never had anyone do that. And GB assessments, they were unheard of for people down my way. So I was having those, and almost got to the point where the trainers would ask me what I was doing in a session sometimes, and I'd be like, I'm just a boxer, you're the coach, you tell me. But sometimes that was literally happening. Like, I'd come out of sparring or something, but, oh, Chris, are you doing the circuit? And I was like, you tell me, like, you're the boss. Like, and I that used to annoy me a little bit, because I was like, I don't want to be setting my own training sessions up. Like, I'm here for a reason. You're a coach for a reason. It was only one coach who just sort of said that he maybe just didn't know, what I had done in the other room, etc. So, but yeah, and
it's generally a sign that it's time to level up. I think when
yeah,
it's going
yeah,
on in a coaching relationship, it's probably a really good message to share. Actually, a great example of that.
Yeah, definitely. And my amateur coach, when I eventually told him that I'm turning pro and I'm turning pro with the McGuigans, he was over the moon. He's like, look, I've taken you as far as I can take you. And for you, you deserve a good coach because of the effort you put in. Because as an amateur, a lot of time it's just you turn up to boxing gym, and a lot of kids just do that and maybe a run. But I was doing those sessions, then asking for extra sessions, then paying for my own strength conditioning sessions, and trying to get my amateur coach to open up another day a week and do pads and stuff like that. So I was always trying to push more and more and more and find more, percentages and get more out of me. And I think for him to hear that I had obviously a world class coach on the way, going to start training with, and he was over the moon, and yeah, he was saying, look, that's what you deserve. So yeah, going into that environment was very humbling, and I very much felt sort of just happy to be there at first, and just very grateful and very thankful for the opportunity.
That's amazing, and thanks for sharing that. And like, one of the things that I've had the privilege to sort of get to know you and had some exposure to you, how you approach your craft. And one of the things that stands out, I think, to anyone that works for you is your professionalism. And I would sort of use the word, you're an edge finder. You're looking for, Shane talked about after you won the world title, about you're looking for 1% everywhere. And could you share to people sort of how that works in your world as beyond the sort of the obvious pad work, sparring, the boxing type stuff, how you leverage other assets to stack
Yeah,
the
I mean,
favor?
I've got an advantage anyway because for me, I think I've got the best coach in the world. Maybe not for everyone, but definitely for me, I've got the best coach in the world, and we work so well together. But I think that alone is a massive, huge percentage, and that's not a 1 or 2%. That's a huge percent because a lot of people go to their gym, they've got their coach, and their coach will stick them on the bags, and we're never stuck on the bags. The bag for us is a workout for a finisher because Shane's hands on pads every day if we're not sparring. So we're either sparring or doing pads when we're punching, and that I think is one thing that sets us apart from the rest. But also Shane's level of pads, which is something you can't just go, okay, well, they do pads all the time, so we should do pads all the time when we're not sparring, because it's the level of pads as well. So their percentages, which, you know, before I even start looking for mine, I've got an edge over people. But then you've got, you know, there's things like the S&C. I'm always looking to do the right S&C, the right exercises, the right thing. And in the last sort of, where are we now? Probably last 10 months or so, I've maybe less than that actually, last 9 months or so, I've started working with a guy called Ben Caraway, who's just he always treated us and for like chiropractic and physical therapy stuff, but now he's doing my S&C, and just it's a new sort of style of training that he's doing. And for example, I haven't got under a barbell once in the last 9 months, and that in S&C is unheard of in elite sport.
Yeah, it's madness. Yeah.
Yeah, like people be like, well, but when you understand it from Ben's point of view, and hopefully he'll bring out some sort of a book on his training or something, because, you know, for now it's fairly secretive. He works with myself as athletes. He works with a few he works with actors and stuff like that as well. But yeah, it's just a new way of training, and it's very tailored and specific to the sport. And that's another edge which I've been able to find, which has helped me massively. And I think Lawrence even said to him after the fight in the ring, said, I don't know what you've done with him, but he's so strong now. And like, obviously I'd done hundreds of rounds of Lawrence before. But yeah, so that's another thing. But then there's like the little things. So like the electrolytes in my drink, and just making sure I'm always hydrated and not just drinking water all the time, especially the amount of sweat during the day. I'm a big sweater anyway. So when I'm sweating out, probably sweat out anywhere between 2 to 3 kilos a day, if not more sometimes. And I think replacing that with just water, I'd feel ruined. That's another thing. Getting my nutrition right. You know, it's very easy to be a carbophobe in boxing, I think, and I think the way the sort of education around nutrition is sort of, it's getting a lot better. But I think boxers are naturally quite carbophobic over the years, because they just see it as putting on weight, and that's what they take out on fight week to drop weight and stuff. So they get scared of it in camp. But yeah, I mean, I fuel up in a huge amount of carbs, and that has helped me massively keep the energy levels high. And then you've got the more, I'd say, different type of things, like the mouth taping, where, you know, some nasal breathing, where during my sleep, blue light blockers before bed, to sort of help me get to sleep better. Whoop, which I actually haven't had on since the fight. I've seen you've got your Whoop on. But
I have
yeah,
indeed, yeah.
using that for my sleep, and to track my sleep and recovery, and make sure I'm you know, getting as much sleep and doing the right things. That's yet another factor. And yeah, that for me is a huge part. And then all these things just add up, you know, and when you do them sort of continuously, it becomes a habit, and then it's just so easy to do by the end, and just natural because it's just part of the routine. But also it just adds up. It just compounds, and those your new sort of level of normal is just much higher than your old level, and I think that's the main thing, is just keeps increasing that sort of
Lifting the
base level.
baseline.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just keep lifting that base level. I think it's a military proverb I heard, but it's like, you don't rise to the level of your expectation, but you fall to the level of your training. And I think that goes for all areas of it. Your training, your recovery, your nutrition, your fueling, all that sort of stuff. And I think once you set that bar, and that's the base level, and then you just keep raising that bar.
absolutely. I want to draw the conversation on now to, I guess, what I'd describe as a peak experience. There's a real obvious one, which is,
Yeah.
I've got no doubt there's going to be a movie about it one day, but there's certainly a documentary it's going to be out soon. But can you talk us through that whole process from the world title fight, like from maybe the moment that you knew it was on?
Yeah, obviously we had the stadium booked, which is the dream venue for me, at AFC Bournemouth Stadium. Dream venue that was booked, but we didn't have an opponent. And we tried a few other world champions, and they were proving difficult or tied up in contracts or whatever elsewhere. Then Lawrence was just about to fight at the end of March, and I think on the Thursday or Friday, we had a Zoom call like, well, what are we going to do? Because these other opponents aren't coming in. Who can we fight to sell out a stadium? And me and Shane had a chat, and Shane just put it to Sky and Boxer, and just said, the promoters, and just said, well, what about Lawrence? He'll get rid of this guy in a few rounds, and then he's got 9 weeks, and the quick turnaround is perfect. It's another payday for him in his eyes, and we probably think that he could beat Chris. And so, yeah, and then he obviously went 12 rounds in that fight, and it was a bit dull. But on the Monday and Tuesday, they put it to him, and he was chatting on Sky Sports, and I was like, this fight's actually going to happen now. And I seen that him talking about me and saying like, all these other guys that I'm in an R in, when they've got a world title shot, I'm willing to give them here. And then I just, the world of social media, I just wrote, no, I'm in an R for me, mate. Let's do this. So then I think within probably a week, the fight was signed, and that's a quick turnaround for a world title fight. For me, it was just, they offered me the good enough money, and in terms of that, but for me, it was about the opportunity to fight for a world title against someone like Lawrence as well, who I knew well, but also it goes deeper than that for me, because I wanted to fight Lawrence in the amateurs, because my last season in the amateurs, or second to last season, he was in the ABAs, and he was number 1 in the country in the GB squad, and he was going into the ABAs, the national championships, and he then qualified for the Olympics, and they took him out of the national championship. So I was like, I missed my opportunity to prove I'm number 1. And truthfully, back then I probably wouldn't have beaten him. I wasn't good enough back then.
You were
and
up
then
for it though.
yeah. I always wanted to box the best in the country. That was always my goal, was to fight number 1, and just see how far I can go with the sport, really, and see how good I can be. And it was, if I ever fell short, it was okay, get better. And that was sort of always my mindset. And then on, so yeah, then when we turned professional, Lawrence was sort of number 1 in the country again, and I was like, okay, like that's the standard. I wasn't at that level yet, but I was like, that's the standard I need to get to fight him.
And just for context to people listening, again, who aren't massive boxing fans, you and Lawrence were actually stablemates for a long
Yeah, so that's
time.
what I was going to say then.
Yeah.
And then he joins the gym. So as a pro, he wasn't in the gym at first. So I'd had 8 fights. So then he joins the gym, and I'm like, that didn't sit well with me at all. Me and Shane had an argument about it, and his point was that, look, he's a few steps ahead of you. And I think at the time Shane thought I wouldn't reach these heights, and I'm sure he'd admit that, and that's understandable from where I was at that time. But I had the foresight to know, and the effort I was going to put in, and the levels I can go to, and the sort of stubbornness I have to never give up. And he yeah, and then we sort of fell out about it, the way it was dealt with, and I really struggled for a few years having Lawrence in the gym, to be honest, because I'm trying to be number one cruiserweight in the world, and I'm not even number one cruiserweight in my gym. So how does that work? And yeah, and then Shane obviously explained that, you know, he's a few steps ahead, and then he's going to win a world title and move up to heavyweight. And then yeah, he won a world title while he was at the gym, and then I was sort of edging up to sort of British European level, a few steps behind him still, and then yeah, and then eventually left the
And here's
gym.
an interesting one. I mean, would you, even looking back now, say that was another blessing in disguise?
Having him in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shane had that foresight. Obviously, we never expected him to leave the gym, but it paid out perfectly for us. Shane had that foresight to, you know, he can help you become a better fighter, and he did. And I think it worked both ways. I think I helped Lawrence become a better fighter. I said that to him in the ring after the fight. He said, look around, look what you've done. Like, look at this crowd. He was fantastic in defeat, the way he dealt with it, and then he said, look, and then I said, yeah, mate. I said, look. I said, look what we've done. I said, like, we've both helped each other get to this level, and you know, we've brought each other up, we've improved each other, and this is a product of all those rounds of sparring over the years. And yeah, obviously a phenomenal night. But yeah, then obviously, like I said, he leaves the gym, the fight gets signed, and then I'm just excited. I was really calm in the whole build up, weirdly.
I mean, I mean, that was something that stood out for me. I remember sort of catching up with you through camp, and you're calm. You felt it was a real powerful aura. It was almost a little bit intimidating. You were extremely centered, extremely focused, and you seemed to have this super high conviction in terms of how the prep was going and what you were going to be able to summon in terms of ability in the night, on the night rather. And
yeah, yeah, and obviously we had that meeting we had that coffee, and I said I was almost concerned, wasn't I, about how I was like,
yeah.
I'm weirdly calm. I said, I don't know. At the moment, I'm quite happy with how calm I am. Like, with,
And you could
you know,
feel it. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I'm quite happy with it, but like, it's just I've never felt like this in a camp, like this calmness, and that sort of just ran into fight night as well.
And talk to us about that then. So you're approaching, it's like the hometown hero at the football club that you had a season ticket at as a kid, you supported your whole life. 15,000 of your mates are there screaming. Talk about a little bit of pressure. You know, looking back to Dean Perkins and his 20 mates, I don't know, over that time, the sort of 14, 15-year-old you might have anticipated what was coming. But how do you balance that? I want to enjoy this experience and I want to deliver.
Yeah, I think it was trying to enjoy it beforehand and after. So I remember going to the stadium on a Wednesday. We did a charity event, little Q&A, and then a little boxing session. I wasn't, you know, really involved in the boxing session, but I was there and watching and stuff. And I remember when I walked out of one of the concourses into the stadium, onto the pitch, or where you can see the pitch, and I sort of welled up in tears. And I was very good at compartmentalizing, like letting my emotions come out at the right time. So there, it didn't matter that I was getting emotional. I wasn't doing it during a press conference or a workout or getting overwhelmed. I just thought, well, there, like, that's the time to get a bit emotional. Like, that's fine. So sort of let it out a little bit. Because you don't want that happening on fight night. Obviously, you don't want to walk out into a stadium and go, "Oh my God, this is incredible!" Like, that's not the time. That's not the right mindset. So yeah, so I sort of just let that emotion out then, and just yeah, I had like tears in my eyes, and it's like, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening. Like, I used to sit up there and, like, in that seat up there as my season ticket as a 12-year-old kid, chanting players' names, wishing, like, thinking that, wow, amazing, like, you having all these fans here singing your name, like, for playing football. And that was like a childhood dream of mine, to play football, and thought, oh, maybe one day I could play football here, obviously as a kid. And then yeah, it was never quite good enough, and then managed to forge my way onto the pitch another way.
Well, there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah, and yeah, then on the Friday we did the ring walk rehearsal. Before the ring walk rehearsal, I went and sat in my old season ticket seat. This is the night before the fight, and I just sat there, And I just thought, this is phenomenal. This is crazy. Look, there's a ring on the pitch, like, and like, obviously, there's a lot of people involved. I'm like, I've done that. Like, I've, this is it. This is not. It doesn't get better than this. It doesn't get better. I used to sit in this seat as a, with a little fake Stone Island coat on, thinking I was a casual, and uh, and chant players' names, and the guy who sings Red Army for me before the ring walk, right, or it's in the middle of this ring walk, but before my Kano tune. He used to sit along. I can't remember if he was along from me or in front of me, but we used to just swap and change seats. But yeah, he was in that area as well. He passed away in November 2021. So now I always have him as before my ring walk, and it's yeah. So like Nonny used to sit there, and like we used to chant this, and I was just like, and now look at this, like this is crazy. And I was sat there for about 5-10 minutes. They're like, "Come on, Chris, you got to do your ring walk rehearsal now, ring walk rehearsal now." So I was just like, yeah, and I just it was nice to really soak. I'm really glad I did that because that was just something off my own back. I was in the stadium. I could have just gone there, gone in the zone, and just gone right. Let's do this. Get back to the hotel and fuel up and whatnot. But I was like, I tried to embrace it and enjoy it beforehand, because it's important to enjoy the journey. So many people in boxing they don't, and then I think they have a massive high for one night after the fight and maybe a week or two after, and then there's just a massive crash, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more in detail. But yeah, then I did my ring walk, literally the whole thing, visualized it, got in the zone, imagined I was gonna be fighting, did my ring walk, did exactly what I do on my ring walk, where stand facing the crowd, turn around, and all that stuff. Do my ring walk, sort of stone faced, doing my ring walk, walking down, get in the ring, do my usual stuff, and yeah, and then that was a moment that I was able to appreciate and enjoy. So then, obviously, then fight night happens and it's not overwhelming. So I've got all the fans there, and I was just in the zone and I was just like ready. Like it was just
You really were. And there was like that routine you're talking about, that preparation, that emotional control. But that ring walk was powerful. Again, it was an infectious environment. And obviously, it was Adele comes on. I mean, I look into my left and right, and there's blokes that look like casuals welling up. And then you come up the top. I mean, it was insane. Seeing you when you turn around, you come in, your eyes again, the just focus, you almost like boom, sort of in the crowd, you could almost feel like stepping back almost to get out of the way. You could feel that focus and just it literally looked like, I often use the analogy, but it looked like if anyone placed anything in front of your eyes, you're going to burn holes through it. It was that level of focus.
That's it. And I think for me, it was all about not getting overwhelmed by the occasion and what it was. At the end of the day, all that mattered was those 36 minutes, those 12 3-minute rounds in the ring. And I appreciated it a little bit before, like I said, and then enjoy it after. But you're only going to be able to enjoy it after if you can focus for those 36 minutes, or obviously longer when you're in the ring walk and all that. So I remember on my ring walk, there's a little bit where the camera's sort of over to my left hand side, and I was like head down in the zone, and then I remember just looking up and just looking around, like because people chanting my name and whatnot, and I was just like nodded to myself like this is it, this is the moment, and very very split second, just not went left the zone, but stayed in the zone, but just allowed that energy to sort of allowed myself to take it on rather than just like have the blinkers on and don't look at anyone, don't appreciate anything, and just all that matters is the ring walk and the ring. I was allowing the energy to sort of help me, and just stoke that in. And there's a moment I just look around and just nod to myself like, yeah, this is good. I'm in a good place, sort of thing. And yeah, then obviously, yeah, the ring walker then down the ramp, and there's literally people either side of got security with you, but I couldn't see anyone like either side. I wouldn't have known who was there or whatever. It could have been my whole family could have been there and I wouldn't have known. I was just zoned in and just let's get to that ring and let's get this job done. And then then there's other things that come into play. So I'm in the ring, and obviously Lawrence doing his ring walk as the champion second, and obviously we're boxing outside at 10:30 at night. And I was like, he might keep me waiting. Like before the fight, I said, "This is a shame. He'll probably keep me waiting." I just had a feeling. And he's never done that before, so I don't know why, but I just had a feeling. And obviously kept me waiting. But obviously had the Through Dart boys design my kit, and they've got the Phalanx fleece. So I got them to send material from the Phalanx fleece up to where my robe gets made in Sheffield. And then, so my robe was lined with fleece. So I had that foresight. I was like, right, that stadium gets cold on a Saturday afternoon in the summer. Like the wind there gets cold. So I was like, it's going to be nighttime. I was like, I'm going to need warm. I was like, can we put anything inside the fleece? And they were like, yeah, if we've got the material, we'll send it up. If not, we'll just we'll get some other stuff and we'll make keep it warm. And then, yeah, I'm waiting for Lawrence, but still, once again, just sort of in the zone. I even said to Shane, I said, as expected, like him, and he goes, yeah, exactly, mate. He goes, yeah, exactly. Like we knew he'd going to keep us waiting.
And you could sense some of the frustration in the crowd then. I was lucky enough to be sort of ringside for that. But what was so impressive to me, because when I'm looking at that through the lens of a performance psychologist, say it's that, don't let their routine disrupt your routine. And what was so evident was your body language, your focus, that look in your eye. It was just so intense. You could tell you were still in control of yourself. You clearly weren't get to you at all. You're working through movements, shots, communicating with Shane.
Yeah, that was it. It was just sort of a second warm up in a way, and just staying very easy to get in the ring without any experience. And obviously, I've experienced big nights before and 12-round fights and stuff. So, and also Lawrence, I've experienced Lawrence before. So it wasn't like, right, what's this bloke going to look like when he's on the other side of the ring to me, or anything like that subconsciously. It was just sort of, I just felt very calm and just sort of just staying mobile, coiling up and just staying moving, keeping the body warmth going. And like I said, just we were prepared for everything. And and then obviously he eventually does his ring walk.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're voluntarily choosing to spend your time here with us. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can in terms of guests, engaging discussions, and thought-provoking conversations every week. And that's where you come in. By hitting that like button and subscribing to the podcast, you play a vital role. Simply put, when you hit that like button or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider the audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents, management teams to free up their diary and come on the show. Thank you in advance for your likes and subscriptions. Now, let's get back to business. And then he gets in and then battle commences, right? And I don't know if you could talk us through, in a condensed way, your experience or how you perceived the fight itself.
Yeah, I thought keep the energy high, but don't sort of overexert yourself early on. You need to keep the energy high to sort of take stuff out of him, because the way he fights, he's a big puncher, and a lot of times big punchers tire quickly, and especially if you're keeping them mentally occupied, which is sort of the key, keeping them mentally occupied by moving, but then not taking too much out of me, which is very easy to do, and something I did earlier on in my career against Richard Riakporhe. I was keeping him mentally occupied, but I was exerting myself too much. I was too busy on my toes and very erratic, but I wasn't in Lawrence. I was just in control, moving and keeping him mentally occupied. And then then the game plan for Shane was, look, stay safe first 3 rounds. Don't even have to win them. He can win the first 3 rounds. That's fine. And then we start picking up sort of he said 3 or 4 rounds. He said, and then I think unfortunately the cameras don't pick it up on the TV, but we will have it in the documentary, which will come out towards the end of the year. The documentary called Stable.
For that.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it, and that's sort of keeping me sort of on that high, because I'm like, I can't wait to relive it from a sort of a cinematic point of view. But I said to him at the end of the third, I said, I'm getting to him. Like he's feeling it, or something along those lines. And then obviously the 4th round comes, and I get the knockdown, and I made him fall short.
And am I correct in saying Lawrence hadn't
he never dropped
down
as a
in his career?
professional?
No.
As an amateur, he did, which is something I watched a lot in the build up was him getting dropped, because it just makes him human, you know what I mean? And people are like, wow, yeah, but he does this, he does that, he does that. I'm like, but he's still
I
human.
love that in elite sport. Whenever anyone I detect, anyone's putting anyone on a pedestal, I love creating the reverse highlight reel. The like
Yeah.
reel just to humanize.
Honestly, I watched it so much because I know Lawrence's strengths so well. So I watched that because, like, there was a point where I built him up to in the gym sometimes where I'd be having bad weeks and be sparring him and on and on. And he's flying in camp and he's about to win a world title. And I was dampened. Do you know what I mean? So I'd done that at times. So then I just made him human and sort of flipped it because I knew how much I'd improved since he'd left the gym, both physically and obviously technically and skill wise. So yeah, so then obviously the fourth round come and yeah, sort of got the knockdown and that was just the timing was perfect.
The place erupted.
Yeah,
It's
I love
mental.
watching it back and hearing that noise of when, like, because a lot of people probably watched the first 3 rounds and probably thought Chris has bottled it, like he's just trying to get through, like the occasion's got to him, and I understand why they would think that watching it back, but that was all part of the game plan, and I was only going to start turning the screw from the fourth, fifth round anyway, and like I said, when I felt him in the third starting to wilt a bit and just making a few errors, he throws a left hook to the head in the fourth round, and I step back and counter him, and then he throws a left hook to the body, and then that's when I step back and call the left hook up that drops him. So it was just those little, just knowing, especially when you know someone so well, like I did with Lawrence, that you know what parts there
And that
when
was a real
they're
tipping
wilting.
point in the fight, right? It suddenly changed and everyone could feel it. Did you start to sense his frustration?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just I said in the build up, I said, I think I'm going to shock Lawrence. I think the strength and the power will shock him because he's never really felt it. But I've never dropped him in sparring. I've never seen him dropped in the gym when he was in our gym or anything like that. So I just thought I'm going to have this sort of element of surprise. Me and me and Shane spoke about it, but also me and my strength coach spoke about it as well. Ben, he was like, he's gonna be so surprised at the strength and power he got, and that was. I still wasn't at 100% because I was ill in the fight week as well. So yeah, and that was a huge turning point in the fight. That was and yeah, like I said, like you said, he'd never been dropped as a professional. So I think that for him was a bit of a shock, and his team, to be honest.
And there was
And
obviously a
that,
couple more to come.
yeah, yeah. I mean, some of them maybe weren't not. One of them was maybe not a knockdown, but when I watch it back, it's hard to tell if I clip him on with the left hook or not in round 10. But um, but yeah, then what the thing in the fourth round, which I watch back and I think from now being ecstatic about the win and everything, and sort of back to sort of normal and not in fight mode. I look at myself, I'm like, I just walk to the neutral corner. Like that was the level of zone I was in. Like I'm in the dream fight at the dream venue. It's the perfect night, and I've just dropped the reigning world champion. Like, and I just walked to the neutral corner like it's nothing, and I, I know, I know the answer, but I also watch it back and think, how does that guy do that? Like from a sort of third party point of view, I'm like, how's he
Well, tell
do
me
that? But
about it. For me, it's the ultimate masterclass in emotional control.
mm,
That from beginning to end, I'm talking beginning for me is looking at that first week of camp. Everything we'll talk about in a bit, but like, to the fight itself is an absolute masterclass. And I reckon sports psychologists would almost literally clip what went on there, and that's the aim in terms of what you want your
yeah,
athlete to do there.
yeah, and I'm really proud of that because for me, sports psychology and the mindset behind sports has always been a massive passion and something I'm really interested in. And when I love a sports documentary on like the last dance of Michael Jordan, his mindset and stuff like that, and all those things I absolutely love. And I think a lot of people do. They love that elite mindset. And when I look at that and I think like that's you achieving it there. And I think a lot of it comes down to the stuff that me and you have done together, but also the breath work that I do. I've got a breath work coach called Jamie Clements who's basically just given me a few routines to do every morning, and then stuff to do whilst I'm training and stuff, and that's helped me massively and just stay calm and just keeps you on a real good level. And now obviously post camp I haven't really been doing it. My 1-year-old's up and keeping and then I wake up in the morning not much sleep and I haven't done my routine, and then throughout the day I feel how stressed I'm getting, like, because my physiology is just not at the same level with just calmness, and my nervous system is like in like fight mode the whole time, like fight or flight the whole time, rather than just staying on a nice calm thing. So
I think it's so important you shared that, because I think a lot of people will be listening to this and talking about this emotional masterclass you sort of demonstrated in terms of emotional control. And it's really, I think, important to highlight there that there's that, that's you when you're aligned with these principles, and that's you in fight mode. Then there's also the human element, and we all have it, even world champions. And perhaps to some people listening that would like to improve in this area, I think the message there is that, look, you can get a grip of it by engaging some of the things you are talking about, which is really empowering.
Yeah, that's it. And I think I think that a lot of people see elite performers, as I have in the past, as inhumane, and they're not human. Like, it's not
Immortal, yeah.
Yeah, they're different. They're built different, but they're not the same. They go through the same things. They fail. That's the biggest thing. Like, people just see me winning a world title, and they haven't seen all the failures and the down times and the hardships that you have to go through. But that's what made me. If it was plain sailing, I would never be at this level. Like, it's as simple as that.
Absolutely. And then, so just to finish that off, then 4th round, it turns, and it's a real battle. I mean, it goes the distance. Were there any points that you did doubt yourself throughout it, or?
No, like, Shane, he gives me a kick up the arse after one round. He's like, mate, you've got to do more. I need more from you. I think it was it might have been after the 6th round. I dropped him the 4th. I think I had a good 5th, and he had a point taken off in the 5th as well.
Yeah.
And then I was 6th or 7th. I wasn't doing enough because I wasn't working up on the inside. And then, and then obviously got knocked down in round 10 and point taken off in round 5 and 7. And it was like, I need you. And like, I just didn't, if I could go back now and be, 100% energy and everything and perfect version of me, I would have done a lot more work and got a lot more work off, but the energy levels, I didn't want to, like, I felt like I was in gear 3 the whole fight. And I felt like if I started getting to gear 4, gear 5, I would have just depleted and not been able to even get into gear 3 because I was ill during the week of the fight and stuff, which sort of, took a lot out of me. And, basically didn't eat I think I had 3 meals in total between Thursday morning and Saturday night. So I think that was 1 on Friday evening and 2 on Saturday, like actual physical meals that I ate, and then it was just getting calories in through liquids where I could, but didn't put near enough weight on as much as I normally would. And so I think the energy levels took a massive hit from sort of the whatever I had, a virus or something during the week, the bug I had, and I think that was sort of energy management was important, and not getting, maybe it helped not having all that energy to keep me calm and stuff. Maybe that was a factor, and
Maybe.
it helped me on the night. But Shane was like, I need a little bit more from you, and I just had to pick my moment because of the energy levels. It was very much about working smart and not working hard, because so many people against Lawrence, when he's holding, leaning, all that stuff, they try and work hard, and that's not necessarily the right thing to do. So especially when in my state where I was depleted, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. It would have given him so much more success and advantages. And it was about when you can't get out, like, of the clinch, don't try and don't waste energy there. Whereas a lot of people do, they're trying to get shots off at the wrong times. As soon as I realized that was the wrong time, I just relax in the inside and just stay calm. But that was what it was about, was energy management. But in terms of, did I doubt myself? Not really, just very much about staying focused. Got a little kick up the arse from Shane, and that helped as well.
Excellent. And then obviously it goes the distance. The crowd, everyone sort of knows who won that fight, but then it's boxing, right? And there's judges, and it's you never know. I mean, how are you feeling at that point?
Yeah, still hadn't like got to the end of the fight and I celebrate thinking like I've won that. But I'm very much a realist in boxing in terms of you get bad decisions. I've had them in the ABAs when I was an amateur. The ABA final, I thought I'd won, and I remember, and then ever since then, I'm like against Richard Riakporhe, I thought I'd won. We thought we had me up in the corner, and obviously didn't get the decision then. And then yeah, and then the first scorecard gets read out, and it's 1-1-12, 1-1-12, and I'm like, what? And then I don't think I listened to the last two scorecards, or I might have listened to one of them. I'm like, but not done the maths, and because I'm like not quite there as such because there's a lot going on. But I was like, surely that's me. But if I'd done the maths, I would be like 100% because one of the scorecards ended in 108 and one ended in 107, which means 107 means I had to have won the fight because there's no, even if I lost every round, I would have had 108. Because I would have only ever lost around 10-9, and then he had points taken off, etc. So some rounds would have been 9-9. But with the knockdowns, I didn't even think that. I didn't even process that, and I just remember. I don't know. I think I looked at the corner after they said the last two scorecards before it said and the new, and I was like, that's got to be me. And then like just to hear it and it just get it confirmed was just pure elation. And finally, like even though I thought I knew after the fight, I thought I knew during the scorecards, that to hear it was just like another level, and just yeah, just a crazy emotion, and gives me goosebumps now. And every time I watch it back, I get emotional, and try and enjoy it as much as I can because it's like I said on during the fight and fight night, it's hard to enjoy the whole atmosphere and everything. But in that moment, it was yeah, incredible.
Oh, amazing. And obviously your wife was in the ring with you to celebrate. It was incredible. And the crowd was just insane. One of the most incredible
Yeah.
sporting events I've ever been at and probably ever will in that
Well,
respect.
yeah. Well, that's. I mean, for me, it's hard to fathom it because I'm like, well, obviously for me, it's going to be crazy because it's like not whoever however many fans are there for me, and then this is my dream. This is my perfect dream. It couldn't have been a better night, location, what was on the line, opponent, anything. It couldn't have got any better for me. Um, so to hear it from other people's point of view is nice, but also like I'm like, how good was it for other people? Because it's not going to be as good as it was for me. Because one, I'm the man in the arena, and two, that's the perfect dream. Like it's the perfect fight. Like I said, all those factors and variables that come into it. They were it was just perfect. So then the atmosphere is just electric. But I've had people message me or tell me. I was at a wedding yesterday, and they were telling me that lads go like, oh, it's one of the best nights I've ever had. And like people saying, I've been to a lot of sporting events over the years, and that was the best one I've ever been to. And I'm like, that's so nice to hear that. Like sometimes you think, oh, people just saying it because you're there in front of them, but I've heard it from so many people. It's like, well, it was absolutely some night, but obviously it was for me. But I'm so glad other people got to experience what I can only imagine in my eyes to be a snippet of what I felt because of everything. So yeah, just pure elation, I think is the word, and the atmosphere was just crazy, and I love watching it back and hearing it all.
And one memory that always stick for me is coming into your changing room afterwards and seeing you, your mum, Mia, and Harry Redknapp doing the old Championes.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah. No, yeah. I try. I feel like in our gym sometimes, obviously, where everyone was elated from the team, but sometimes we forget to really celebrate those moments. Shane's not a drinker and stuff like that, so we kind of forget to celebrate those moments. So I've always wanted to sort of be in a football changing room and as a team and celebrate. So there I was in a football changing room, celebrating with my team. So yeah, chanting Champions, and see Man City do it enough this season.
Yeah,
And
sick of
yeah,
that. Yeah.
and yeah, and then yeah, so it's a great moment, and yeah, just crazy, just so nice to have my whole family there. with my team in the change room, because that's just all the important people to me. You know, I was surrounded by them, and got to share that moment with them, which was for me, you know, really important. I've got all my close family there, mum, dad, brothers, Mia. Then I've got my team, Shane, the whole McGuigan family, Josh Pritchard. Then I've got old gym mates, Luke Campbell and George Groves, who have been massive inspirations to me during my careers, and now they're good friends. And yeah, just really special, but important, I think, to sort of have those people around you in those moments and properly celebrate it,
Absolutely.
and appreciate it, because sometimes it can just be what's next. And you know, I got asked that in the press conference a huge amount, like what's next. I just said, look, I appreciate you've got to ask that, but I'm not going to answer that question tonight. Tonight is a night I'm just going to celebrate and appreciate this moment, because it, in sport, it's always what's next. Don't get me wrong. If I lose my next fight, I'll get forgotten about, or even if I retired, people get forgotten about very quickly. So, but I want to appreciate that moment, and enjoy it. So, yeah, that was really nice to have everyone there and be able to do that.
Brilliant. I mean, and obviously now I want to pivot, because we've talked about this peak experience, and it's insane. It literally is the stuff movies are made of. It's every kid's dream. And listening to you, I guess, you know, it can almost sound like, okay, formulate, you set this goal, you do that one. You talked about that from the amateurs, and there's this like linear progression, but it's not so simple like that. And people publicly perhaps see the, you know, the public side of it, but behind the scenes, I mean, you alluded to one particular challenge you had in camp, but like you're into camp and then you get some tough news personally. Could you talk to us about the situation with your mum?
Yeah, yeah. I think I said before it was 6 weeks, but it must have been closer to the fight than that. I think it was about four weeks before the fight. I've found out my mum's got breast cancer, and she had it 25 years ago and had a mastectomy, and thankfully got through it. You know, she had chemo, radiotherapy, and all that stuff before. And then a couple of years ago, she had a stroke, and so I worry about my mum. Like, she's like my hero, my best mate. So I worry about her all the time anyway. Every day I'm, every few days at least, I'm messaging her like, "You drinking enough water? You doing this? You know, mouth taping," because I got her on the mouth tape. So yeah, I'm always on her, bless her. So yeah, I found that out, and Mia was with me, but she'd found out that morning, and then my mum was telling me when I got back from London, and apparently Mia said to her like, "Don't tell Chris, don't tell Chris, you can't tell him before the fight, you can't tell him." And my mum was like, "I've got to tell him, like, I can't not." And she was right, because if I'd found out after the fight, I would have been angry. It would have tainted the night in a way, because I want to, yeah, I'd want to know that information. It gives me another reason to fight for something, another bit of motivation as well, when you have that news and you know it. Yeah, and then to be honest, it wasn't. It's just bad news, and it's all, cancer's always bad, but it was almost the best form. Mum was like, "Look, it's a small lump. I haven't got to have chemo or radiotherapy. I'm going to get a mastectomy. I've already decided." And that's, I think it was 2 weeks after my fight. She's like, "I'm going to book it in for then." And yeah, so the the way she is, she's so positive the whole time, and I think because of the way the news was, it was a positive side of getting the news, or it was in the most positive way possible. It was, right, you have got cancer, but it's small. It should be dealt with fairly easy, and she's since had the operation, and it doesn't even look like she had an operation. She went in for a checkup a week later, and they were like, "I can't believe you had an operation." But yeah, so to get that news was, I just sort of, I parked it, but I think my mum helped me park the news, because she was like, "Look," she wasn't crying or anything. She wasn't down, but she's like, "Look, it's small. It's much smaller. It's like a quarter of the size of my original lump that I did the first time. I don't need radio. I don't need this." So it's like, cool. Like, mum's cool. She's gonna have the uh um have the surgery in 6 weeks after the fight. There's nothing we could do. I've always been about controlling the controllables. So, you know, since then I sort of just, between then and the fight, I just went, just sort of zoned in really, and just sort of made sure she was okay. But she she was so positive, and like I said, nothing we could do, control the controllables. There's nothing we could control about a situation apart from booking for surgery, and then yeah, I took her in for surgery and everything after the fight, which I'm really glad I was able and around to do that and be there for her and stay at hers and look after her and stuff, which is the least I can do after what she's done for me and in 32, nearly 33 years. So yeah, it was like I said, I think mentally it was just mum helped me deal with it in a very good way because the way she responded to it.
That's amazing. And obviously wish your mum the absolute best in terms of her accelerated recovery.
Thank you.
And I mean, that it's some challenge to go through while you've got this on the other side, you've got this dream opportunity, and then there's that challenge. But then you alluded to it briefly, but then fight week, your son Frank, amazing. But he comes, was it a cough, cold, or?
No, so he had sickness and diarrhea the week
Ideal.
before on the Wednesday. And then I get home on the Friday night and Mia goes away, my wife goes away for a hen do. And so I'm looking after him during the days, but I stay in a hotel on weekends anyway because he wasn't sleeping great. So like people is my mother-in-law or our best friends had him overnight, but I had to be with him in the day and stuff. And then I have to go back up to London on the Sunday night, train Monday, and then Tuesday, stay out there Monday night, come back Tuesday, and then Tuesday morning I had woke up, terrible night's sleep Monday night, just tossing, turning, felt horrible, and then yeah, just I was on the toilet for way too regularly. Nothing solid was coming out, and I was like, oh dear. Then I was sick twice as well. On my Whoop, I think that day on the Tuesday, I think I had an 11% recovery. My HRV was like 38 or something like that. I'd have to check, but
Yeah.
it was low. It's usually up in around the 100 mark, so it's pretty low. And yeah, and then it just felt rough all day. And
I mean,
then
that's just far from ideal when you're
yeah,
going for a world title fight. And again, like back to the psychological piece or emotional control piece, what's going through your head in terms of how you manage that?
I think speak to the right people. So I spoke to a doctor we know, and he was like, look, don't eat. I'd already eaten some by the time I spoke to him. It was like, just for 24 hours, don't eat. Just have diarrhea, which usually I wouldn't do on fight week because of the salts. Like you sort of manipulate the salt content and stuff as well within yourself, to help with the weight because it holds on to water, etc. But because I wasn't eating anything, I was like, that's the only form of fuel I'm getting. So I did that for 24 hours, had some food, didn't agree with me. So this run basically ran on to Thursday morning. Thursday morning I ate again, and I was like, this is not ideal. And then I rang my nutritionist because me, my manager, Josh, me, my manager, which is Shane's brother, Jake McGuigan. So it's me, Jake McGuigan, Shane McGuigan, Josh Pritchard, and Mia that knew. So obviously wouldn't let anyone. And then two of my mates knew because I had to get them to come and help me on the Tuesday night to get all my stuff from the car because I had no energy to lift anything. And I had like all my bags, all my stuff, my sauna blanket, everything, like all my meals, my supplements, my bag of stuff, my clothes. And then so they come and help me, and I was like, look, lads, like this is the situation. One of them actually, I voice noted because I was meant to on fight week. I like to have like a get together with my mates on one of the nights just to chill out. So I was inviting them to the hotel on the Tuesday night anyway. And then I just put into the group like, lads, I can't make tonight. I've got a few bits to do. And then one of them, who's a really good friend of mine, was like, messaged me privately, was like, "You all right, mate?" Like, not like obviously not like you to cancel, but maybe thought like I was feeling the pressure or whatever. But yeah, then I eventually told him, and he came and helped me. So very few of you. Bring my nutritionist on Thursday. I was like, and he's on holiday because he's getting married the following Monday, so he's out in Marbella. But he's always there for me, and that's the beauty of him. I was like, mate, can you call me when you get a chance? Like, mate, give me 10 minutes. He's on holiday with his missus, his family, his little one, a 1 year old. And he was like, yes. I was like, oh yeah, this is the situation, blah blah. And he was like, okay, well, just eat dry foods, and no dairy. And I've been having like, I don't know why I didn't think of it myself, but it's fight week. I was like, you try and have low carb stuff, high protein stuff. So I'm like having like yogurt in the mornings and stuff like that, and nothing, and eggs and stuff like that. And he's like, that's like basically the worst thing I could eat. And yeah, and he's like, right, eat dry food, no dairy at all. So like dry bread or rice crackers, with nothing on them, like maybe like some salt or salted ones and stuff. So then and I kept that down, and that was my Thursday, and that was the last thing I ate until Friday evening. Because just still, and then Thursday afternoon actually, I did the press conference, and I felt a bit better. I felt a lot better, to be honest, compared to what I had been. Energy levels weren't high in terms of physically, but yeah, the rest of it, mentally, I was all right at the press conference. Felt a little bit more with it in my head. Whereas at the workout the day before, I was all over the shop and doing the workout, putting on a brave face. But yeah, and then obviously got to Friday, made weight, and sort of everything had settled down a bit, and I felt a little bit more normal, and I could eat properly. So
And
yeah, we got there in the end.
You certainly did. And on that note, this concept of things coming up from nowhere when everything's going well, or just when you really don't need it, something comes up. What's your advice to people that, maybe it's not a world title fight, but, they've got a goal and then inevitably life throws a sidewinder their way? Is there any advice that you would direct them in on?
Well, for me, it was like the fight's happening Saturday. I've got to get in the ring Saturday night. I've got to give it everything that I can physically and mentally give it. So that's going to happen anyway. So regardless of how I feel, I even said to myself, if I get in the changing room and I feel crap in the warm up, I just won't warm up. I'll just save all the energy I've got, and I've got 12 3-minute rounds to get in the ring and give it everything. Obviously, we got to Saturday, felt fine on Saturday. Obviously, energy levels weren't as high as it could have been, but actually, the energy I had mentally, I felt fine to give it. But during the fight, obviously, was when the energy levels, I didn't feel like I had more gears. But yeah, so I felt fine, thankfully. But I was just like, the fight is happening, so I've got my goal. That's happening. That's not moving. I can't move it. This is where we're at. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to fight for a world title at the football stadium. If I cancel, this is never happening again. So that's happening. So now all I need to do is control the controllables, and that's get myself as well as I can to perform the best. And sometimes just simplifying it, and doing that and saying, look, these are the cards you've been dealt. You can't change them. You can't do anything about it. You can only deal with what you've got and the tools you've got, which may be for some people a lot more difficult. But I just took all emotion out of it and but I wish I would this. I was like, look, all we can do, we can deal with the ifs, buts, and maybes after the fight. For now, all I can do is control the controllables, get myself prepared as much as possible to get in that ring and give whatever I've got, 100% of what I've got. And I think that's just how I did it. I was never putting out that fight. It was way too big an opportunity. And I don't know, maybe there was some weird divine sort of thing telling me that it was all going to be okay, because that's how I felt the whole time. I never once panicked during the whole thing. Looking back, I think once again but I think maybe it helped because I knew Lawrence and I knew what I can and can't do. But yeah, just basically what I could control was how I deal with the situation. And
That's brilliant. It's great insight into sort of, because you certainly come across to me anyway as a glass 3/4 full type of bloke. And it's clear that there's some methodology behind that belief rather than some rose tinted glasses type stuff. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing is staying calm in those situations and controlling what you can control, and what will be will be. I heard a quote actually from Triple H said it. He was in the wrestler was in Floyd Mayweather's changing room before a fight once, and he said that he didn't really feel comfortable in there. He was like, "Oh, Floyd, I'm going to go down." Floyd was like, "No, no, stay, stay." And then like 20 minutes later, "Floyd, I'm going to go now." Blah blah. And that happened like 2 or 3 times, and then Floyd at the end was like, "Look, stay. Like whatever's done is done. I've done all my training. I'll warm up when I'm going to warm up, and whatever's going to happen tonight is going to happen." And I've sort of just always thought of it like that, and thought that that's such a good way to look at it. Like, what's that? You can't go back and do another run. You can't go back and do another spar. You can't go back and change what you ate yesterday. So it's just basically this is what will be, and I think that's kind of the way you got to look at it. Do everything you can to 100%, and then what will be will be.
Amazing. And then Chris, just pivoting again, like the other side of training, performance, winning world titles, navigating adversity is sort of the off switch, that ability to actually, I talk about the term like green head, but that zone of restoration, recovery, rejuvenation. Like how do you switch off? How do you maximize that?
Boxing, I think any sport for me, and I think it probably is for a lot of athletes, it's a 24/7 job. So it's not turn up at training and do your training and leave. It's like do the extras for a start, but also do the recovery, and the recovery starts as soon as your session finishes, from hydration, eating as soon as you can, getting the right foods in, doing some breath work. So for me, like switching on, I mean, the breath work's helped massively for helping me switch off and stay sort of calm and sort of level myself out, and but also the experience, I think. And that's one thing you can't teach people. You can't teach experience. You just got to experience it. And I think I used to get so frustrated in some sparring sessions when they were bad, or training sessions when they're bad, or to be on the pads, get really irate at myself and change to hate it. Like it'd be so annoyed with how annoyed I was getting because I couldn't get something. Rather than go, okay, tomorrow's a new day, that's behind me. Once again, sort of what I was just alluding to there with sort of what will be, and what's done is done. I think, yeah, it was like, okay, tomorrow's a new day. You will have good days, you will have bad days, you will have terrible days, you have fantastic days. Not so many fantastic days because you're training all the time, and it's hard. You can't peak during training camp. You can't just peak to one day. Even when you're doing your last spar, you've probably trained twice the day before. If you're doing like a long 12-round spar or whatever it is. So I think, yeah, it's just about breaking it down into sort of mini cycles, and letting the recovery just, be part of it. And like I said, 24/7, it's just as soon as you finish a session, you're working towards the next session, or which is maybe the next day. So then you've got to think, okay, don't eat too late, don't look at screens too late. Make sure you're hydrated and your sleep's good, because then the sleep's good, and then everything's just a snowball effect. And I feel like I did that really well this camp and this year in general. I had all my sessions sort of planned out there or thereabouts, had the days I'd be training, but at the same time you've got to be adaptable. But yeah, I think switching off, the breath work has been huge, to be honest. But it hasn't been like a using it after the fact. It's been almost like a pre thing. Like I'd wake up in the
Yeah.
mornings. I had a really good morning routine where I'd get up, run my cold bath, drink some water. As the cold bath's run, I'd do my 12-minute mobility routine, turn the bath off, make a protein shake, take the protein shake in the bath, or like to drink, to have while I'm in there. And in there, I'll do my breath work. And that routine was just became so natural and such a good habit. And I think that just set me up for a winning day. And I know you're big on that, on just sort of how you start is almost how you finish. Just putting yourself in that position. Whereas sometimes I used to wake up and I'd have like an hour to go till I've got to be at training, and I'm like, okay, I haven't eaten, I haven't drunk anything, I haven't done any mobility, and I just like that was earlier on in my career. And once again, that experience comes in, and you start to learn, give yourself the best chance to have the best day possible.
Well, that's it. I mean,
Um,
imagine that the two yous there, one that lies in bed to the last minute, scrolling on social media, or whatever, jumps up, rushes to training, versus the you that does, you know, what you just talked about, different
yeah,
animals, and do that over 365 days. There's going to be a very different outcome at the end of it.
yeah, and I think that's something I've really tuned into in the last, like gradually through the years. Sort of first when you're not fighting like huge opponents, you know, big names, people you know you can beat. Um, you sort of take a few shortcuts, like not shortcuts as such, but just you're not on it as much as you should be. And then through the years, you get more and more professional. You know, you don't, and I think for people, they sometimes too hard on themselves. I've always been very hard on myself. Like I'm not being professional enough. I'm not being professional enough. Even if I'm doing more than other people, I'm like I can do better. And I think that's the key to a lot of things. Is people like, okay, that's the way it's done, rather than looking at it, go, okay, well, what can we do better? Like I know that's you know half of what your majority of what your job is like, okay, that might work now, and that's how it's always been done, but how can we maximize it? How can we get this to perfect? And that's how I've always been in my mindset.
That's amazing. And so, Chris, like, what are you most excited about next?
I mean, it's difficult. It is difficult for me because we spoke about it, like that mindset of I've achieved the perfect dream. I won't have a more perfect night than that. And I think me knowing that is a good thing. I think I won't be chasing that, trying to get the perfect night, but I can still have great, phenomenal nights, and that's what excites me. And I think now that then obviously my name's got a lot bigger, and I think the fans have got even warmed to me even more because we've gone from 3,500 in the small arena to the 15,000 in the stadium, and I think that was that has helped me grow even more, and the fan base is huge, you know, and down in Bournemouth especially. So I think that it's just going to grow, and I think more people are going to get involved, and more people will be singing at fights and stuff. So, and the atmosphere, like I said, is why I got into the sport. So, I think that's the thing that boxers miss most, and sports people miss most, is that elation of support that you get. Yeah, the elation of having that support there for you and having that feeling. I think that's what a lot of people miss and go chasing post career. So for me, it's about getting as many of those nights as we can, creating as many great memories as we can. Obviously, earning as much money as I can
Yeah,
along the way as well.
security is
But
important in that respect.
yeah, but that's not the thing that excites me because I'm not a materialistic person. I don't want a flash car. I don't want to. I like, you know, I'm a bit into watches, but I'm not like into like 20 grand watches or anything like that. Like that's probably the only thing I'm interested in, is maybe a few watches here and there, but you're not talking like stupid money for them. So the money's not being for me in terms of excitement. Obviously, it's important because I've got a son, I've got a family, and I want to provide. And also, my career's not long, so I've got to look at that as well. But yeah, um, uh, more titles, more belts, and just more memories, and that's for me is what it's about, is having as many memories that I can live off when
Is
I
there? I mean,
retire.
is there a dream opponent next? I mean, I heard there's a Mexican lad who fancies a crack at a cruiserweight belt.
Yeah, I mean, there was talk of Canelo coming up to cruiserweight, but and obviously he's the biggest name in the sport, and but I think he's trying to box at £5 over the light heavyweight limit, which is still £20 below the cruiserweight limit, and there's no
Yeah.
way I'm getting there. And Badu Jack, who he was going to fight, he used to box at light heavyweight, and he's not even interested in getting down to there. So I understand it from both their point of views. At the end of the day, Canelo's the big name. He calls the shots. He's the money. Um, but and he's also, you know, boxed at middle and super middleweight most of his career. Um, so why would you go up to £200 when for him to actually get anywhere near £200, he wouldn't be in shape. Um, so but then at Badou Jack, so I get his point as well. You know, I'm a cruiserweight. I'm not £5 above light heavyweight. That's not the cruiserweight limit. So I can't see that fight happening. But I think the dream fight for me now would be Richard Riakporhe rematch, for if he can go and win a world title and we unify. I think that's a huge fight. And that really whets the appetite for me. That's what I want to be in. I've always wanted to be in big domestic clashes. I have been in a lot. Of first Reactable fight, then I went fought Craig Glover, boxed a guy called Nathan Fawley from Wales. And then obviously had the Tommy McCarthy 2 fights, the Isaac Chamberlain fight, the Lawrence fight. So they're the fights that I really get up for, and I absolutely love those
I mean,
fights.
it's
And
a really unique time, right, for cruiserweights in the UK.
yeah,
Probably got at least 3 or 4 of the top 5 or 6 on the planet at the moment.
yeah, they're all very highly ranked, and I've proven I'm not afraid to mix it with any of them, including the most big and awkward one, which was Lawrence in the last one.
Well, no one
And
wanted to touch him, did they?
no, he's never looked close to getting beat in his whole professional career, and I think that's something I alluded to before the fight, because for me that was important. It was important for me to really make people aware of that. So when I beat him, I get the plaudits for it, and not just, oh, he's rubbish and that sort of stuff, because he's effective at what he does. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be a British cruiserweight for sure.
Absolutely. Chris, I just want to finish off with some more sort of quick fire questions, if that's all right with you.
Go for it.
Greatest athlete of all time?
LeBron James for me. Do you want a reason?
Yeah, go on.
He just does everything. He just seems to do it. I mean, look at his longevity. I think longevity is a massive factor of the perfect athlete, because the greatest athlete, because that shows, over time people can have one hit seasons or a 3 year period where they're good. You look at the likes of like Eden Hazard in football, couple of seasons fantastic, but the longevity of LeBron James playing at the top and still performing how he is, does everything right from what we see. I think he's one of the first athletes to have a whoop, like all those things. I love how he seems to just look for every single aspect of it, and really push that. And the way he carries himself as well. I think he carries himself really well. And I think
Yeah,
that when you're such a big star, is so important, because you're so influential on all these people. Obviously, boxing most of the time doesn't have very good role models. But yeah, it's important. I think the way he carries himself, I think that adds to what makes him the greatest athlete. And I think it's the only reason other people may not see him as it is because he hasn't um he hasn't retired yet. He's still not done.
yeah,
But there's plenty up there. Roger Federer is another
yeah, of
one for me.
course.
The class and the way he played, and what he did for the sport was fantastic.
What about greatest team of all time? And I don't want any ridiculous bias and Bournemouth popping up here. I'll not be
Yeah,
tolerating that.
2002 Bournemouth team. Yeah. No, I think, it's a difficult one. I think for me, I've got to go for like probably. I mean, obviously a football fan. I follow football a lot. I go. I'm biased probably because they're British, but I think Fergie's United was special because they had a leader in Fergie who was phenomenal. You had characters like Roy Keane in there, and like
Yeah,
the dynamic of all. But then you had like the class of a winger like Giggsy, and then the sort of iconic person in Beckham, and then you've got
yeah,
people, the Scholes, he was sort of the quiet one, but people think he's one of the best players of all time, and the players that played against him say he's one of the best players of all. So like, I think you had some, and it was in a time where like in the 90s football was just different. It was just different, and you look at like the
I
lineup
often
of
wonder that because you say that and I feel exactly the same. And I'm like, is that just because I grew up with it at that point in time?
the
But
whole
it just
sport was
felt like a
different.
different sport, right?
Yeah, it was you had, I mean, the tackles that used to go in them for a start, so you had to be built a bit differently, but so
Yeah.
you had to have a bit more grit and tenacity about you, I think, back then, a bit more of the mindset during competition, whereas now there's more of it outside of competition, more of that longevity and that living lifestyle, where I think
Mhm.
is where more gains are made now because people live a lot better. Whereas back then, you had people like Gaza, who obviously was a big drinker and still used to be able to perform at the level he
Like a
did. And
magician, yeah.
yeah, and yeah. So for me, I mean, I watched that treble winning season. It was phenomenal. But don't get me wrong, but that's just off the top of my head. That's what comes to my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite movie?
Inception.
Nice.
Yeah, I love Inception. It's a it's a it's a thinker, isn't it?
Is
But I love the concept of it all.
favorite series?
Um, I'm enjoying Succession at the moment, but I think that's a bit of recency bias, but it's really good.
Yeah.
I think The Wire, I never actually finished it, but I used to watch that in camp. That was an epic. So I'll probably say The Wire.
And book?
I'll have to go two different books. I'll go fiction and non-fiction. Fiction, Harry Potter series, because I grew up with them, and um, it was just so magical for me, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. You know, kind of like the idea of there being like a chosen one, and sort of you put yourself as that character. I think. And then Atomic Habits by James Clear as a non-fiction, just the sort of process of life, and that's sort of how I try and live. I need to read it again, probably to freshen myself
Is
up a
one of
bit.
those that is good for that, isn't it? To recycle through just to keep you checking in on the basics, because that's one of the most fundamental
Yeah, and it's just
aspects of
about
performance
just
in
the
anything.
way I think it's not like it's not a mindset book. It is, but it's not. It's not like think like this, do like this. I think it's so good because like your book in a way, it's just about processes and just the little nuances that you have to do and how simple it can be to build a habit. And
Yeah.
then I like what he says in it about you're always voting for one or the other in every situation. So if you get up in the morning and something you do will be a vote to one way, which is the way you don't want, or the other way, and it's never in the middle, and you don't choose to do that, so you'll stay in the middle. It's you pushing yourself backwards. So
Absolutely.
you're always moving the needle. You're either moving it forward or moving it back, and that's every decision you make. And I try and live my life by that as well as I can while staying human.
Yeah. And the last one, well, penultimate one for me was going to be a personal mantra. I know you've got one.
Yeah, consistency builds success. Obviously, my initials are CVS, and I've always liked to use those as a mantra. So consistency builds success, and I like to think I'm the epitome of that because I've just stayed so consistent over the years. I don't drink. I've been always consistently looking for gains. I've always lived the life. I've always just stayed consistent with my processes, my thoughts, my goals. I've never veered away from them. So the consistency is, and I see it more and more now about consistency, and I don't know whether that's because I'm more aware of it because I use it a lot more as a word, but it seems like everyone at the top of something is like consistency is what matters, and I think I'm one of the best examples of that because I wasn't any superstar amateur or kid or didn't start boxing until I was 16, so wasn't like I had the born talent or anything like that, and I think I just stayed at it and yeah, obviously achieved my ultimate dream.
Brilliant. And Chris, you've given us so many snippets of advice throughout this conversation. But last question is to someone who's listening to this now that perhaps knows deep down they've got a bit more in them, but they're not quite sure how to express it. I know you've touched on a few things, but what would be your sort of final piece of advice or one message you'd love to communicate to that person?
Have no regrets, I think, is one for me, and I think that's how I've always lived. Don't live in don't be 10 years down the line and live in hindsight. Try and have the foresight to go, if I give it everything and still fail, will I have any regrets? And that's sort of how I've lived my life. In my 20s, I was earning no money because I had this foresight to just, I'll be happy if I get to 40 earning no money, but have no regrets about, coulda, woulda, shoulda. And I think that happens a lot. My amateur coach said it really well to me. He said, yeah, that's like about my drink. We was chatting. I was like, yeah, I don't drink during the boxing season back then, and now obviously don't drink at all. But like, yeah, well, look, you can either be the person in the pub in when you're 40, 50, retired or whatever, saying I could have been this, I could have been that, or you could be the one there with the actual real stories of I did this, I did that, and for me, that was sort of how I looked at it, and had the foresight to think, okay, will I regret giving it everything in this thing, even if you have to compromise elsewhere? But what will what will you regret? What will be the hardest thing to take? And sometimes that's hard to do because it might involve breaking down relationships and stuff like that. But that relationship will break down when you get to the point, if you haven't given it everything, and you're gonna start resenting the people or the situations. So yeah, don't have any regrets. Pick what you want to do. Have no regrets about it, and give it absolutely everything. And at the end, at least you gave it your all, and that's all we can do in life.
Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us. It's been immense. Yeah, I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yes, mate. And I'd like to say thank you on here for all your help. It's been phenomenal for me to have that soundboard and little snippets that you've given me, and little insights and help. So a big help, mate, and thank you for helping me, win a world title.
Thanks so much, mate. That means a hell of a lot coming from you.
Thank you.
No surrender, and speak to you soon.
Awesome, mate.
So what a conversation with Chris. Always love catching up with him. Now, that evening, Chris gave an absolute masterclass in emotional control, and he gave us some insight into that there. And I want to go into a bit more depth in terms of what I mean by this. It's an area that's going to come up again and again in the conversations on this podcast. So I want to give you some base level introduction to what elite psychology looks like, so you can extract more and more value moving forward. Plus, everyone everywhere talks about how important mindset is. There's very little information out there in, well, what do we actually mean by that? And how do we actually go to work on our psychology? There's no doubt that Chris's ability to master his own mind had an enormous role on his ability to win that world title. He demonstrated phenomenal emotional control. And that brings that first question up. What is emotional control and how do we define it? So for me, I'm looking at the ability to monitor, evaluate, and modify your emotional reactions to the ever-changing demands that life and elite performance brings. Elite performance without pressure, forget it. There is no such thing. The two are inseparable. If you want to excel, pressure is inevitable. Perhaps the most unique characteristic of the elite is that when the going gets tough, outlier performers flick the switch, regulate their emotion, and fight the urge to panic. They emerge from crisis triumphant, stronger than when they went in. To perform when it counts is the measure of elite performance. 10 years of work can come down to 10 crucial seconds, whether it's cup finals, major tournaments, product launches, television, the leading role, or final exams. We may have spent months getting to that point, but ultimately we're going to be judged on our ability to deliver that single performance. Few of us have experienced boxing in a world title fight, built a $1 billion company, or flown fighter jets, but we can all relate to choking under pressure. Everyone listening, from school student to professor, from novice to Olympian, graduate to CEO, one time or another has choked under pressure. When the stakes are high, sometimes the only thing we can do effectively is hit the self-destruct button. And the way our mind can commit acts of mutiny against us can be an infuriating experience. Not only that, too many of us experience frustration over not performing the way we know we're truly capable of. The pressure isn't the problem. It's how we react to it that can be. Do you stay calm and collected like Chris, or do you start to overthink your performance and capitulate? Now, the fact is that when the stakes are high, one of the biggest risks for any team or individual is that we bottle it, and you cannot simply train harder to prevent it. At this point, it's time to deliver on all your potential and demonstrate all the skill you've acquired when it matters most, on demand and under pressure. Not everybody can. It doesn't matter that you have a 100% success rate scoring penalties in practice. The only thing that counts is you score that one single penalty in extra time or the World Cup final against the Germans. Luckily, emotional control is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed with the right strategy and effort. Now, this all starts with understanding what goes on behind your eyes that causes you to perform so poorly or so well. If you don't know how your brain works, it's only natural to feel like the victim when negative emotions strike. And that's what I want to talk to you about now. The tool I'm going to introduce you to is the best way I know how to upskill people into the basics of performance or performance psychology and emotional control. And this model was adapted from the famous circumplex model of emotion. And I want you to imagine a circle separated into 4 zones with a horizontal axis that dictates the quality of your emotions, left side negative, right side positive, and a vertical axis that dictates your output and focus of energy. So at the bottom being low output, low focus, and at the top being high output, high focus. The 4 zones, now at any point in time, you'll find yourself in one. And I've color coded them. So we're talking blue, red, black, and green. Only one is optimal for performance. Each zone has a unique inbuilt psychological and biological function that dictates how you think, how you feel, how you act, and ultimately how you perform. Now, in terms of using this barometer, you can use it to check in acute situations like during a game, working day, or series of games. You can also check in chronologically across tournaments, seasons, and careers. So first up, blue head. Now, when it's time to compete or perform, your number one aim is to be in top right. You want a high output of energy, laser focused on the task at hand, and you want to be feeling good about it. Psychologists will call this flow. Athletes call it the zone. I call it blue head. And when you're in blue head, you just know there's this lightness and energy that radiates through your body, and you're totally locked into the moment. For Chris, the sort of distant, unfocused gaze, crisp nod, and glint in his eye said it all. Adjectives that might describe how you might feel in here are excited, confident, motivated, among others. Or as one outlier put it best to me, I feel like a god in here. Now, the blue zone represents the grace of elite performance. Your presence in blue head is exclusively in the here and now. There's zero worrying about the past or anxiety about the future. If you're like me, you're going to dream about these moments. This, for me, is the true thrill of excellence. And blue zone is so powerful because it prompts the secretion of 6 neurochemicals that drive elite performance. We've got norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, anandamide, and oxytocin. They release in perfect symphony, right sequence, right concentration, right time. Blue head is no accident. There's an evolutionary mechanism behind this chemical symphony of indestructibility and flow, and it's called broaden and build theory. The super 6 neurochemicals not only make you feel good, but they narrow that focus to the task at hand. They accelerate your ability to think quick. They make you more skilled in complex analysis and enhance your ability to see and invent new ways of doing things. It also enhances your ability to acquire skill and maximizes the resources around you and develop innovative solutions to overcome challenges that present, shifting the baseline of your capabilities. And it's for this reason that blue zone is where all the magic happens. It's the total opposite of the fight, flight, or freeze response that gets way too much airtime. Now, here's the crucial thing. In blue head, your blood flow is locked into your unconscious brain. Your unconscious brain is the source from which peak performance flows. Your skills are stored in your brain as mental structures. They're like spiders' webs of knowledge that you can literally see on what very expensive scans of your brain. Your unconscious brain is where these mental structures or skills are stored for automatic and rapid deployment. Chris's unconscious brain automatically computes the angles of Okolie's shots, calculating the most promising options to execute the counterpunch with the precision and power which resulted in that beautiful left hook in the 4th round. All elite skill execution is an unconscious process. It occurs automatically when your unconscious brain is in the driving seat. In live performance, situations unfold so fast, there is zero time for analysis. And luckily for you, your unconscious brain already knows what to do. Then from time to time, elite performance requires some conscious thinking, like when Chris and his coach Shane would analyze his opponent Lawrence between rounds using facts and logic. This is where your frontal brain comes in. In the event that any challenges appear that require some conscious thought, your frontal brain, the default backup in elite performance, wakes up and takes over control from your unconscious brain. Now, when you're thinking in a calm, rational, controlled manner, your frontal brain is in control. Your frontal brain is that part of you that you think with when you're thinking, if that makes any sense. It's like the CEO of your life, the part of you that thinks about what you're doing before you do it. It's right with common sense, interpreting information based on objective data in search of the truth, which in turn leads to informing a plan. Now, when in control, you stick to the plan. You make calm, informed, rational decisions, just like Chris did in those first few rounds, where he was happy to concede a few of them in as part of the sort of conscious, intentional plan. That's all frontal brain work. Now, crucially, my primary aim for any individual or organization I'm working with is that when it's time to train or compete, they have the capacity or know-how to flick the switch and plug into Bluehead, just like Chris did. Now, when we talk about psychological skills training and psychological capacity, there's 3 core skills, and this one's that first one, that ability to switch on when it's time to compete on demand and under pressure, just like Chris did, as we've discussed. And then here's what happens next. Enter Redhead. So you're up in Bluehead, all's going well, and then whack, you get this metaphorical kick in the pants. This could be one of 1,000 things: a bad call from the ref, market crashing, sight of the audience, bullets cracking and thumping past your skull. Whenever you perceive the demands placed upon you to outweigh your perceptions of your capacity to deal with those demands, your emotional brain triggers stress and sends you into Redhead. The color red is associated with threat, fear, and danger. Terms like red mist, redlining, and seeing red represent anger, shock, and frustration. It's the precise opposite of Bluehead. You'll generally see flaring nostrils, sweeping arms, and sharp gestures that say it all. In Redhead, you run too hot, burn up, become overwhelmed, and tense. Your emotional engine is metaphorically smoking, your perception's slow, the game starts to run away from you, your decision-making becomes rushed and irrational, and you're close to meltdown. And this is kind of what we saw start happening to Lawrence Okolie in that fight more and more as the fight went on and Chris seized control. Now, when stress hits, your emotional brain will always act first. Your heart will begin to pound, your teeth will grind, your body will tense up. Your emotional brain is way more powerful and reacts way faster than your unconscious or frontal brain. And in effect, you trade out your steely blue head for a red-headed emotional freakout. Now, from a hormonal perspective, you trade in the Super 6 high-performance neurochemicals for the frustrating 3 stress hormones: cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. When these flood your body, the power supply is pulled from your unconscious and frontal brain, forcing them to shut down. Now, your emotional brain, the real culprit, is in the driving seat. It's, in effect, the do-it-yourself lobotomy. It's your emotional brain that blurts out drivel while your frontal brain is left thinking, why the hell did I just say that? Anytime you have irrational thoughts or feelings, your emotional brain is running the show. Here's the absolute killer, though. When the switch that channels the power supply to the emotional brain is left on, you lose access to all your skill and ability you spent years encoding in the unconscious part of your brain, your advanced mental structures. Unconscious skill execution stops, logical thinking stops, and the skill breaks down completely, causing you to choke. Your talent disappears, you temporarily become a novice again, And the worst part about choking is that it tends to spiral. As you fixate on worst case scenarios, adrenaline shoots through you, ramps up, and you second guess skills that have been honed through years of practice. This is exactly what happens when we see the golfer choke on the 18th hole. They start to perceive the threat, whether it's the crowd, media, realization they might actually achieve their dream. They start to make the event bigger than the moment, and they choke. They lose access to all those skills stored in their unconscious brain, and a shot that they could hit blindfolded in blue head becomes impossible in red head. Now, our emotional brain has evolved over millions of years as a survival mechanism, and the primary purpose is to keep us alive. For our caveman ancestors, failure meant death, whether that was escaping giant bears, African crowned eagles, saber-toothed tigers, or failing to be accepted by the tribe or to propagate the species. Whatever it was, your emotional brain alerted you to that danger. And this is why it evolved such a heightened sensitivity to threat and such an enormous capacity for negative emotion, over 3 times the intensity of positive. We call this loss aversion bias, and it's why we fear losing the game, the pitch, capital 3 times more intensely than we appreciate winning it. Now, on a kind of important side note, spending time in redhead is not just to the detriment of your performance, but you could argue more importantly to your health. Most of the time, the event you initially anticipate that sends you into redhead never materializes. But consequently, the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, and noradrenaline continue to circulate after redlining for prolonged periods. And they are linked to virtually every major disease known to man. Not only that, because energy is contagious, living in the cortisol-fueled redhead can be very costly to those you care for, compete with, and lead, your teammates and family, and that of those you serve, so the defendant, hostage, or customer, investor, amongst others. And this is why my second focus, and the focus of any leader or performer, in terms of optimizing performance, should be ensuring that when redhead inevitably strikes, which it will from time to time, that the performer or the organization is equipped to identify it fast and then has the capability to flick the control switch and bounce back into blue head as soon as possible. So back to that psychological skills and what does it tangibly look like? Well, if the first skill is that ability to switch on, the second is that ability to hit the control switch when redhead inevitably strikes. Spend too much time in redhead and eventually you'll burn out. The brain and body can become so drained and toxic, they just collapse. Here, there's no energy left, no focus, and you feel really bad. You can't perform in this zone. When you're unable to detoxify after a stressful event and are then exposed to more and more stress, your brain and body will eventually break down and burn out. The vacant stares, slack expressions, bent neck sort of says it all. The emotions that engulf us in this zone are helplessness, hopelessness, detachment, misery. You're going to lose interest, isolate, withdraw from responsibilities, excessively procrastinate, feel like you failed, doubt yourself and your role in life, and you are going to be riddled with anxiety and neurosis about things that would never previously trouble you. In here, you probably feel overworked, undervalued, apathetic, and you'll struggle to see hope of change. Now, the symptoms in here are pathological at this point. So we're talking strokes, heart attacks, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, thyroid shutdown, migraines, and autoimmune disease. The thing with this one is blackhead doesn't just hit you like the kick in the pants redhead delivers. You don't suddenly wake up one morning and sort of think, oh, I feel burnt out. Instead, it's insidious. It creeps up on you over time, and this can make awareness challenging. Now, both professional and lifestyle challenges can produce burnout. Professional causes tend to revolve around lack of concordance with or little or no control over your work, no routine, experience a lack of recognition, unclear expectations. performing monotonous work, a serious lack of challenge, or operating in unrelenting chaos. Lifestyle causes of burnout can include lack of recovery, so sleep, nutrition, hydration, change, holiday, lack of close supportive relationships, taking on too much, not asking for help, and an inability to say no. The good news is that through simply reversing these conditions, you can immediately begin the recovery process. Too many consecutive days trapped in here means it's time to take action. This is a completely reversible state. The trouble is that when we're in the darkness, there is blackhead. It's hard to see the way out. You need to call a timeout and tell someone you trust. Now, we must limit redhead to avoid blackhead. But the pressing question now becomes, well, how do we prevent this? And the short answer is by flicking the off switch. Enter greenhead. The off switch, when flicked, moves you straight into greenhead, bottom right. Now, greenhead is not only the antidote to red and black, it's where you sharpen the axe. It's the zone of restoration, recovery, rejuvenation, and most importantly, growth. Green zone is where you renew and expand your capacity to meet the demands, performance, or life imposed on you. For some, it's going to be a siesta in the sun. For others, it's watching Game of Thrones on the sofa. Others, laughing and joking with friends or family. There's a million and one ways we can do this. But the emotions that we're after that characterize this zone include serenity, contentment, and peace. The only rule is not being allowed out of first gear mentally or emotionally, and potentially physically if you're an athlete. You're not focusing on anything and you feel relaxed. To increase your capacity to handle stress, you need to expose yourself to the demands of live performance, be it physical, mental, or emotional. This exposure is your brain and body's stimulus to adapt to a superior level. It triggers all the physical and psychological adaptations that result in growth. But growth itself does not occur in the training room, on the pitch, or in the boardroom. You can only expand your ability in green zone. It's in this recovery zone that we actually adapt and improve. This is the other side of competing and training, and elite performers know this. We call this process supercompensation, defined as the adaptations that result in advanced abilities that can only be achieved through rest. Your growth will always be proportionate to the quantity and quality of your recovery. And that's why my third aim is that the second the performer is no longer competing or training, we need to get them straight into green zone to maximize the quality and quantity of their recovery. So in terms of those three psychological capacities, that ability to flick the switch when it's time to compete and perform and access blue head, that ability to hit the control switch and bounce back when redhead inevitably strikes. The third one is this ability to flick the off switch when it's time to rest and recover. A massive part of optimizing performance is about finding the correct balance between performing work, like blue head and a bit of red, of course, and recovering from that work, which is very much green head. Switching on blue head when it's time to compete and train, or flicking the control switch when you're shunted into red head, or engaging the off switch to access green head is what emotional control is all about. This is what outlier performers like Chris do best. Chris hit the control switch exceptionally well when hit with challenges like his mother's diagnosis or falling ill the week of the fight. Simultaneously, he was able to flick the off switch throughout his training camp to super compensate from his hard training. And ultimately, he was able to get bang in top right, flicking that on switch to deliver on fight night. With this level of emotional control, successful performance becomes a series of exciting, explosive bouts of training and competition, interspersed with enjoyable periods of rest and recovery, the oscillation between blue and green head. In elite performance, the difference in ability is so tight at the top level, and it often comes down to who can do this best. Yet still, so many organizations fail to psychologically prepare their performers in this mental aspect as much as they might do a technical or physical skill. And I think they're missing an enormous trick here. There is so much you can do to build these three crucial psychological skills, and it's a huge part of what the mindset app's about. But if you are someone who struggles to manage your emotions, it's probably not because of insufficient willpower, discipline, or even knowledge. Most likely it's because you've probably never really taken the time to reflect on how your thoughts and actions impact how you feel and perform, let alone to perfect the routines that run you all day. And we'll explore how to do all of this as the podcast unfolds. We know that performance is never a coincidence. You can use intentional intervention to build out personalized routines, just like Chris has, that become switches to flick when the moment requires. This puts you in the driver's seat when it comes to managing your emotions and optimizing your performance. Now, some immediate areas to focus on include reflection questions. Like, first up, what takes you into redhead? Can you stop it? Is there a commute you can alter, a person you can stop spending time with, or a habit you can break? Then what takes you into green? And can you schedule more of it? Is there an activity you enjoy, a person you like spending time with, a place you enjoy going? When was the last time you specifically scheduled time for relaxation and recovery? 3, when are you in blue head? What were you doing? What was unique about that moment? Can you do more of it? What tasks take you there? What responsibilities do you thrive on? And what people bring this out in you? Engage in more of that. And 4, when in black, and I hope you don't get there, but who are you going to let know? Friend, coach, colleague, family member, but make sure you've got someone front and center that you're happy to speak to if that situation arises. Now, I hope this barometer gives you some context of what elite emotional control looks like, and we'll certainly dive deeper into the more specifics of how we engage and flick these switches as the podcast unfolds. My favorite thing about the barometer is that it demystifies our emotions and provides a platform for common language or for group conversation. And the colors in the barometer have a specific purpose. They form a shared performance language that, like all shared languages, enables us to connect and communicate in this area better. You can use this code to inform a teammate that they are redlining, or to reinforce through reward a performer who stays blue under pressure, just like a coach might reinforce a technical skill perform well, or by just saying, I'm in red at the moment. Everyone's clear on where you are emotionally and can then assist you to flick the switch. This is going to be a massive area we focus on as the podcast progresses. And if you want to get stuck in and immediately start to develop these 3 crucial skills, there's plenty of emotional control training exercises on the Mindset app, which you can find a link to in the description. You'll also find guided performance routines for the on, control, and off switch. I want to say a massive thank you to Chris. I'm always inspired and pumped after speaking with you, mate. Keep up the good work. I know this world title is just the beginning. Speak soon. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. I love this topic of human performance and excellence, and I've been engaged in it neurotically for the last 20 years. It's a sincere privilege to have the opportunity to share my knowledge, network, and learnings with you. Now, go and put the principles to work. Make sure you let us know what resonates. Reach out with questions, blind spots. We've got you covered. Remember, excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. Now go and win your day. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you might want a physical reference point and to gain even deeper awareness of the concepts discussed. The book's actually more of an operation manual containing more detail with a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit, which was one of my main motivations in writing it. Yes, I want the podcast and the book to be inspiring and entertaining, but it was non-negotiable for me to make sure that the listener or reader is provided with a structure and direction in terms of actually putting this stuff to work. The book's called Accelerating Excellence. It's a #1 international bestseller. And if you're moving from more than just interest towards implementation, I think you'll really enjoy it. Like everything I do, the book is evidence-based, but practice-led, drawing on my experience working with some of the world's most elite, exclusive, high-performing teams and individuals. It's filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. If this sounds like something from you, see the link in description where you can download 6 chapters of the book for free in either audio or digital format. It's also available to purchase on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at your local bookstore. I hope you enjoy. By now, we all know the importance of a winning mindset. We're bombarded with elite performers telling us that mindset's what separates the best from the rest. That if we want to be successful, we need to be more confident, resilient, and motivated. And of course, when panic strikes, we need to calm down, relax, or chill out. Great, we get it. But the question is how? We're given this guidance with almost zero practical advice in terms of how to achieve it. Where can we actually go to develop that world-class mindset? What's the back squat for resilience, the bench press for confidence, and the bicep curl for positive thinking? Well, that's why I created the Mindset app. Through the app, you'll gain access to the psychological skills training used by world champion athletes, special forces operators, and some of the world's most successful traders and investors. The reality is these guys pay me a fortune to help them get this right. But the thing is, these skills are equally, if not more important, for the aspiring athlete, executive, or operator. And that's exactly why I created this app. I want these tools and training available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Mindset is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed with the right strategy and effort. The tools and techniques are designed in a way that will literally rewire your brain, like learning to ride a bike or drive a car. All the techniques are designed with creating a high-performing, self-regulating you 2.0. Every strategy in the Mindset app is backed by empirical research. There's 10-minute emotional control training exercises that have been shown to increase your ability to overcome detrimental decision-making biases by up to 80%. In another study, just 3 weeks of executing visualization training led to 34% improvements in performance. Another research group found 50% greater improvements in the rate of learning. And just a few weeks of performing visualization led to 22% reductions in anxiety and 21% increases in confidence. These numbers are phenomenal, and I've never met an elite performer in any domain that can afford to be missing out on this type of edge. What I love most is that we've structured everything so that you don't need to carve out an extra hour in your day to get this done. Small bite-sized chunks of 5 to 10 minutes are all it takes. In fact, I'd only encourage you to use the tool on your commute, in the sauna, at the end of your working day, or bolt it onto the end of your gym session. Any dead time you have can now immediately be transformed to deliver you extreme performance gains. My goal is to remove every possible obstacle to your development. And with that in mind, the basic package is completely free. Visit the link in description and sign up for our pre-launch free emotional control, visualization, and performance routine programs. I really hope you enjoy.